Welcome to Stimulate Conversations, a sexual wellness business discussions podcast that supports the vast range of professionals supporting consumers from a business perspective within the sexual wellness space. My name is Nicole Leinbach, your host, and the founder of Stimulate, a B2B sexual wellness trade show held annually in Nashville, as well as many other Stimulate experiences throughout the year. I'm also author of the book Retail 101 from McGraw-Hill and professor of retail marketing at Columbia, Chicago. From head to toe, young to mature, purpose to pleasure, Stimulate Conversations is committed to supporting sexual wellness professionals. Together with industry leaders as our guests, we look forward to delivering trusted and important conversations to help support retail, wholesale, spa, salon, and medical professionals who collectively want to help elevate and support their consumers within the sexual wellness community from an educated and professional perspective. Listeners of Stimulate Conversations can look forward to gaining expert-led insight from industry leaders, ranging from doctors to retail operational experts to industry visionaries and more. Without further ado, let's dive into Stimulate Conversations. Kicking off the first episode of Stimulate Conversations is Emily Washcovick, Yelp's small business expert. Without further ado, let's dive into the first ever Stimulate Conversations. Emily, I am so thrilled to have you able to join us today for a variety of reasons. We have worked together over the last 8 years at many different events, many different experiences. We've gone mystery shopping together, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to our audience today, who I know is going to gain so much valued insight and expertise from you. Welcome, Emily.
So excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Emily, I'm just going to get straight to the punch here. Peer-to-peer reviews are truly one of the most valued ways consumers make purchase decisions. Yelp really pioneered this, and so thankfully, we can all gain from it. And for consumers to be able to share their feedback to stores and other businesses on Yelp is truly invaluable. And it's really evolved over time. Can you share with the audience how Yelp supporters and how Yelp businesses in general have been able to leverage this from this peer-to-peer perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So Yelp started almost 20 years ago in 2004, and it was originally actually an idea to have a way to review doctors. That was the original intention, actually. And back then, it was super hard to find information about providers. There really wasn't much on the web. And so our founder, Jeremy Stoppelman, and some of his other partners got the platform going. But we as humans eat out, we enjoy food a lot more than we need a place to go for a doctor. And so Yelp quickly became a place that people used to review restaurants. And now, all these years later, it really is a platform for all types of industries. And I think the reason that it's taken off so much is with the age of the internet, we're all used to being able to hear what other people have to say. And, a decade or 2 decades ago, maybe your only options were to ask a family member or a friend. But nowadays, you can turn to the web and find tons of other consumer information that can help you make better decisions. And so that's kind of where Yelp lives in that ecosystem, trying to connect a consumer to a business owner. But the beautiful thing, and sometimes the misunderstood thing about Yelp, is it's not just a place for consumers to share their experiences and write their reviews. That certainly is one of the main use cases of the platform. But it's also a place for business owners to tell people who they are. And that's how a lot of online listings actually work for business owners. There's free tools where you can claim your account and actually say, hey, here's what I offer. Here's when we're open. And by verifying that business information on Yelp and other online listing sites, you're essentially just making sure that you show up as an option no matter what way customers start out their search to find you. And the last thing I'd say, kind of to close that first question out, is People search in tons of different ways nowadays. They might still get that referral from family or friends, but then they likely go onto the internet to validate what they've been told or what they've heard. And that's why having a presence online as a business owner is so important. Even if that referral funnel of customers telling other future customers is your biggest engine of getting new customers, the internet is still an important component of that customer journey. And you just want to make sure that you're represented and able to be found in the places customers are looking.
Yeah, I mean, what a super interesting story that it started within the medical space, evolved to restaurants, and of course, here we are within retail category as well. I know just having spent so much time with you, you've told me that like all of those places are important, but retail is among the top searched, right? Is that correct, if I
Yes, it
recall?
is.
And
And
keeping that in mind, yeah, no, I was just gonna say, keeping that in mind, like expand on that because I really want our listeners to understand how to leverage this resource so that they can, in fact, make sure that when customers on that path to purchase are looking for somewhere to shop, they can, in fact, discover their destination, their store, their salon, their spa, wherever it may be.
yeah, retail is huge on the site. And really, the way you want to think about Yelp is it's all localized searches. So people are looking in their immediate area for something that they need. And with retail, you might think that your competition is people buying things e-commerce only and they're just staying online to have that transaction. But on Yelp, when people are searching, they are actually searching because they want to come and be a business or be a consumer at a business in person. When they're looking up retail spots, they actually want to see what's around them. And if they're looking for something broad like gifts, they can find options, but they can also get specific. If there's a certain item that they're looking for, Yelp can really help them search for that in a more direct way, and it'll actually show them businesses that match with exactly what they need. So, if you're in a niche industry of retail, you want to make sure that you use your listing to talk about all those niche offerings. So, if we're talking about, the wellness space, there's a lot of ways that you can describe who you are and what sets you apart from maybe the traditional competitor in your photo captions or in your about the business section. And so it's a really great way to actually highlight that uniqueness about your business and what you're offering. In the retail space, it could be everything from a brand named item to just a themed thing. Maybe right now is the time of year where your gift shop actually has Halloween decor out, and that's a seasonal thing. You can still get on the internet and promote that through channels like your online review sites, your social media. And so it's really just a part of that bigger picture of how you show up as a business online.
So I want to break down a little bit of what you've said, Emily, because, again, I've spent a lot of time with you and I really, really value what Yelp can offer in terms of connecting businesses to consumers. But, so often, as you know, businesses are very, very busy. They're stretched thin. Many of them are independent operators. And with that in mind, they don't always know, hey, I have to claim that Yelp account. I actually have to capture our business identity within that Yelp community. And then from there, they actually need to offer their business insight, their store hours, their store contact information. If I know for sure, because you just mentioned it again, you have great photo caption opportunities. But then what I'm also hearing is that throughout the year, take the time to update it. If it's a seasonal time frame, make sure you're updating things that might speak to that season. Or even if your store hours change, I remember going back to the COVID days of which Yelp, a lot of people did not update their store hours, their store address, and so it was confusing for consumers. So any insight you can share with our listeners in regards to really managing from that business side their Yelp presence?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always tell people to claim your business page or to add your business to Yelp for the very first time really only requires about 30 minutes to get started. And the main thing you're going to want to remember is to go to business.yelp.com. That's where you're going to get started. And that's also where you're going to log in anytime you want to return to your business owner's account. So when you get there, it's going to ask you to search first for the business that you want to add, just to make sure a page doesn't already exist. And if it does, we'll make sure you can claim that existing page. Once you get in there to your free business user account, there's really three main things that you want to do. The first is check out that basic business information section. So on Yelp, it's labeled business information. That's going to include website, address if you have a brick and mortar, but you don't need a brick and mortar to be on Yelp. All hours, like you mentioned, all of that basic stuff. You want to make sure that's on there. And that's super important. The second step is going to be the about the business section. So on Yelp, you have specialties, history, and meet the owner or manager. Now, these sections are where you can tell more about the business, and the keywords and phrases that you include in those sections help you appear in search results. So if you're a retailer that offers things for female wellness, for example, you might include some of those keywords and phrases surrounding female wellness in your about section. And then the last is the photos, like you mentioned, on Yelp, extremely important, but on all of your online listings, images are great. I always say shoot for a minimum of 10. On Yelp, you can do unlimited. And with the photos, you want to add a caption. Those captions also help you appear in search results. So keep those in mind when you fill that out. Now, everything I just talked about on Yelp is free. And on many of your online listing sites, that is the same. You can claim a version of the page as the business owner and make sure the business information is accurate. Now, you mentioned hours, and I just want to drill down on that one more time because on the Yelp page, it's extremely important. And you also have the option to set special hours or holiday hours. So you can go as far in the future as you want to indicate anytime your business hours are going to be abnormal. I tell people set an alarm on your calendar for every quarter and just make sure your online listings are up to date. The last thing I'll say about the hours is I think some business owners don't realize that having your hours on your social profile, for example, in your about section is really important because you have consumers that might already know about you and they want to come back and spend money with you. They could go a ton of places to find your business information. On a place like Yelp, it's very easy to find, but they might go look at your Instagram. So make sure you have that basic operating information on any of your online listings so that if a consumer goes to their preferred platform, they're not getting false information. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense and
Awesome.
so valuable. Thank you. I have a feeling a lot of our attendees were taking some pretty aggressive notes there, but good thing is they can hit repeat on this as well. So, one of the things I really love about Yelp is that it can be disruptive. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think disruption is actually what can wake businesses up. It certainly wakes consumers up. And so, keeping that in mind, I want to kind of explore that a little bit. When I think of Yelp, I know for a fact that it is, in fact, connecting brands and businesses together, right? It's also leading customers on a path of discovery that they may not have intended otherwise. So, like you just said, using captions in your photos and those keywords that can truly help consumers find places they didn't know existed. So, this is a wonderful thing for, of course, brands to do. So, but let's face it, that's not always easy and turnkey for retailers and operators of businesses to just implement and put out there. I'm curious as we think about disruption, the question becomes how do business operators handle moments of disruption that they have no control over, for one? I think you know where I'm going with this, but also just in general to help better support their businesses.
Yeah. So I'll start actually with some inspiration from an episode I just recorded this week with a business owner. And they told me that in their customer service department, they always talk about how proactive communication and patience with the customers helps avoid problems that pop up later. And I think that that's true a lot of times, but that open communication for small businesses is sometimes the biggest hurdle. And like you mentioned, they're doing so many things. So it's really hard to stay on top of everything. But once you have these online listings set up, you want to make sure you have your notifications turned on for one, because that's going to keep you connected to what's going on. It's going to help prevent you having to go in and constantly look and see, did I get a review or something like that? So turn those notifications on so that you can see if there's customer communication coming into you that you need to address. But then really it is about just being willing to be responsive. And so when you talk about disruptions, I of course think of critical feedback or critical reviews, but I also think of random things like an employee not showing up for their shift. And those things can all impact a business owner along their daily journey and be a barrier to getting things done. But if you get over the emotional hump of, am I going to engage with a customer online that isn't a million percent happy with everything? I think it's a lot easier. So the first step is to make sure that you approach your online feedback and customer communications the same way you would in person. If you own a retail store and someone were to come up and say, "Hey, can I talk to the manager? I wasn't able to get what I want," you would address that customer right away. But I think online, sometimes as business owners, we look at that as different value feedback from a customer. We'd prefer they tell us in person. We think it's unfair that they're sitting behind their keyboard as a stranger sharing this feedback. But really, that is more of a myth than it is a reality. On Yelp, for example, we have more 5-star reviews than 1, 2, and 3-star reviews combined. And so business owners fear getting that 1-star. Oh my gosh, it's going to ruin my whole day, my whole week, whatever it is. That's a disruption, right? Critical feedback can be a disruption. But it can also be critical information that can help you be better and help you find and connect with more customers. And so what I would say is have those alerts so that you know when people are talking about you and be ready to react and respond and engage with what people have to say about you. Now, a piece of advice I always give is to set up Google alerts for your business name, maybe even for your name as an owner if you're really, out there front and center representing the business. And this is a free thing to do. Literally just Google alerts. I have them set up for my name. I have them set up for some other random keywords. You can choose how often it sends you an alert. But what you really want to know is if someone is talking about your business, where are they talking and what are they saying so that you can engage and have a presence. And to some people, that might sound like so much work. Like, I really don't have time for this. Maybe there's someone on your team who can do it. I know a lot of business owners, maybe their partner helps them with the comms. Maybe that's not their best skill set. That's actually the couple I was talking to. They own a pest control company and the wife runs the entire back of house. She manages all the customer service reps. So maybe you're a solo operator and this seems overwhelming to you. Is there someone that you can get to help you as this is just a small little project? Maybe it's not a full-time employee, but I think the first step is stop being afraid to engage digitally. Make sure you have a plan in place so that you know when people are talking about you online and you can jump in and be a part of that dialogue. And then the last thing is probably to have some sort of method for how you implement feedback, right? And I'll give you a quick example because I think sometimes people misunderstand what I'm saying and they think that I'm saying every time a customer tells you something, you have to change, you have to address it. I don't feel that way at all. I think it's all information and you can change based on your business. So let's say a tapas restaurant. I love this example because it's one of the first business owners I met years ago. He started this restaurant at small plates, right? One of the menu items used to be 3 jumbo meatballs for $15. They changed it to an a la carte menu item. Buy meatballs, 1 up to as many as you want. They're $5 a piece. The price literally stayed exactly the same, 3 for 15 or a la carte, 1 for 5 each. But people really hated the a la carte. They were writing reviews about how they were too expensive. And so they switched it back and those reviews stopped. But in general, when they would get reviews about the business being expensive, they would respond to those reviews and explain they're a farm to table restaurant. They source ingredients locally, and that's why they have some of those higher price points. So that's the difference between hearing what customers have to say and asking yourself, is this a perception thing? Can we do or change something to improve this? Or is this person not the right customer for our business? And maybe getting that critical feedback is good. And by responding to it, I can highlight who we really are. I can show that I'm a trustworthy business that cares about my customers. And in the circle of life, just hearing what those customers are saying is going to improve your business overall, whether you implement a change based on the feedback or not. I just talked in a big circle, but I hope that was helpful.
Oh, it's incredibly helpful. And one of the first things you said was that the emotional hump is part of what the business operator should, with your suggestion as well as my suggestion, avoid. You want to avoid the emotional hump and instead be proactive, setting those alerts so that you're notified a comment's been made, and then having a plan in place to follow up. So I think you gave fantastic advice. I will extend that advice by saying there's always these 5 C's of communication that I like to talk about. And, I am a self described retail geek. I'm also a professor of college, and I have been for nearly 20 years. It's one of the most favorite things I share with my students every semester. And those 5 C's are clear, concise, correct, courteous, and consistency. So you want to be clear in your communication, concise. You don't need to be so wordy that it becomes like a novel, but rather summarize what you need to, but do so clear, concise, correct with accuracy, of course. Courteous, so whatever your professional tone is, and then consistency. And when I think of consistency at Yelp, I think don't chime in, let's say, when you get an alert, let's say, and you do so promptly, which is wonderful, by the way, but then wait 6 months later before you follow up on all the other alerts that you might get in between. Because when consumers go to Yelp, they can see that void of communication as well. So consistency is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just showing up online creates trust with consumers and makes you look real and
Mhm.
valid.
100%. And so, speaking of that trust, longevity is really important. It's critical for businesses. And certainly, the economy always has its ups and downs, but savvy business owners are always looking ahead, and the most savvy business owners are ready and willing to be agile and pivot when necessary and lean into technology and other things that are reinforcing consumer behavior, such as peer-to-peer sites such as Yelp offer, but many other things along the way. But what works for one business doesn't always work for another. And I want to look at a little bit more specifically how services and products sold within the sexual wellness space can more confidently market their businesses through Yelp. Because let's face it, a tapas restaurant or a pest control business all find value from Yelp. But when we dial it into the sexual wellness community specifically, what insight can you offer to help them better navigate that Yelp experience?
Yeah, and I think this advice I'll give is great for Yelp, and I'll tell you how to optimize Yelp, but I think it's good for all of your online presence. So just keep this in mind as I kind of break this down. When it comes to the sexual wellness space, I think you're going to have to do a little bit of consumer searching on your own to see what those common keyword searches are for your industry so that you can make sure you're speaking specifically to what a consumer looks for. So I'll give you a little Yelp hack. If you go to yelp.com and start by putting in your location first. So let's just say LA. You're in one of our big markets. When you go back to the search bar to find and you start to type, so let's just say sexual wellness is the general term we're thinking is commonly searched. You can start typing that term in, and Yelp is going to give you predictive search data based on that location. So let's use a non sexual wellness example so people know what I mean. If I'm searching in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I live, and I start typing SNO, it's going to show me snow removal as an option. That will not show up if I put LA as the location. If I start typing SNO in LA, it's probably going to show me stuff like snow cones. I'm serious. And so for you as a sexual wellness retailer, do some of those searches, see what the predictive search data is, and then on top of that, do the search and look at the other business pages that are popping up as an option. Because even myself, someone who's been at Yelp for almost 10 years, I don't know every single distinct category that we have, and we're adding new categories all the time. So you want to do some of those searches to see what's happening in your area in that same industry. Some people feel funky looking at their own market. They think it's like ripping off a competitor. So look at another city if that makes you feel a little uncomfortable. See what sort of sexual wellness options are popping up in a large scale market, and then use some of that keyword terminology on your page. Now, I think the other thing in the sexual wellness space is going to be to really hone in on who you are and what you offer. And this is true for any industry, but I think in this particular industry, it's important to note that you don't want to be everything to everyone. Sometimes when people set up their Yelp page, they want to be in all the categories. They want to say they do all the things. And really, what that does is it connects them with broader consumer searches than what they can provide a service for. I would say be really niche about what your store offers. Maybe it's specifically for females. Maybe it's specifically something that is talking about toys or items. You can use those keywords and terminology in your about section to really highlight who you are as a business. The last thing I'd say is if you carry any name brands, and I often give this advice to a hair salon, is another great example. Those are good to include in photo captions or other areas because some consumers might specifically want an item or a brand name that you carry. So keep that in mind as a way to just add additional information to your page. Be really specific about what you offer, get really niche about who you are, and use those common search terms that are within your industry umbrella to bulk up the content on your page and make sure that you show up as a great option. And if you need a little advice from maybe how people describe them on other pages, you can just do some Google searches as well. I do that sometimes to see what terminology people use in different industries. So don't feel uncomfortable about that. Just doing searches and seeing what's out there. I think it'll really spark what good keywords and terminology you want to incorporate into your listing.
Super tremendous insight. Thank you so much, Emily. And I have a feeling our listeners are really going to want to tune in again and learn from you again. So, where can they find you once this conversation ends today?
Yeah. So business.yelp.com, where I was sending them to claim or add their page, is where you can also get in touch with a lot of other resources of ours, including my podcast, Behind the Review. You'll see a little tab at the top for all the resources that we offer businesses. And you can even see my contact information there as well. If people do want to reach out to me, you can find me at EmilyRW@yelp.com. As you know, I always share my email address, so no one's a stranger if they pop in my inbox. You can ask me anything, and if I don't know the answer, I can certainly connect you with someone else at Yelp that does. And then I would also recommend that people follow Yelp for Business on social media. We share tips and tricks and advice all the time for how you can better maximize your online profiles and just how to engage with customers on review sites in general.
Super valuable. I know I personally follow Yelp for Business via Twitter and some others. I believe probably a couple other handles. I see it pop into my Facebook probably too, and very valuable insight. So thank you so much for that. Also, I am a huge fan of Behind the Review. So those of you listening, definitely take the time to download that. She has amazing discussions with amazing leaders from various categories that you can learn from everyone. And finally, Emily, as part of the Stimulate Conversations experience, I have some rapid fire questions I'm going to ask you. So I'm going to ask you these questions. If you could just give a simple, quick reply for each one, that would be great. It's a lot of fun. So, you ready?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, great. Well, let's kick it off. What does sexual wellness mean to you?
Personal pleasure.
And how do you define good customer service?
I think good customer service requires humanization, connection with your customers, and actually being real and vulnerable with them.
And what keeps you personally inspired?
I honestly think the business owners I meet keep me inspired. They're out there every day making it happen for themselves. And I just hope I can provide little bits of insight to help them better their business and achieve their goals with their small business journey.
And what about professionally inspired? So that was personally. What about
Oh
professionally?
my gosh, look at that. I said my business owners are my personal. That's amazing. I
You can
think
switch them.
I think
You can switch them. I love
professionally.
that it's intertwined.
No, I love it. And I think professionally, I work with a lot of amazing people that really keep me inspired. Different people at Yelp who their mission might be different for why they want to connect people and local businesses, but we're all kind of always showing up with a good attitude in mind because that's just our energy and our culture. So the people I work with keep me inspired at work.
Love that. And what is the best advice you have for business leaders?
You don't have to do it alone. There's always someone out there who can help you, whether it's someone who's been through the experience like you, or maybe just someone who's passionate about your business and can give you a little bit of support.
So thank you so much, Emily. What great advice. I'm inspired just by listening to you speak today. So on behalf of the entire Stimulate team, thank you so much for joining us and being our first ever Stimulate Conversations guest. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
And with that, absolutely. And for those of you who've tuned in today, thank you as well. Stimulate Conversations offers a private Facebook community for ongoing and more in-depth conversations, which you can find via Facebook. The group name is Stimulate Sexual Wellness Business Discussions. You can also stay connected via Instagram at the handle Stimulate the Show. And we welcome direct emails at stimulate@retailminded.com. I'm Nicole Leinbach, the founder of Stimulate, and together with the entire Stimulate team, we look forward to continued discussions about, you guessed it, keeping you stimulated in the business of sexual wellness. Next episode guest of Stimulate Conversations will be Dr. Arena, who will join us to discuss menopause realities and ways to ease them, and will include insight as well for business operators to better support their menopause-based customers. So till next time, stay stimulated and talk to you then. Stimulate Conversations offers year-round ways to stay in touch between our podcasts, including a private Facebook community for ongoing and more in-depth discussions, which you can find via Facebook at the group name Stimulate Sexual Wellness Business Discussions. You can also stay connected via Instagram at the handle Stimulate the Show. And you're welcome to email us at stimulate@retailminded.com. I'm Nicole Leinbach, founder of Stimulate and your host. And together with the entire Stimulate team, we look forward to continued discussions that will, you guessed it, keep you stimulated on the business of sexual wellness. Till next time, stay stimulated.